Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. A couple of days ago, I did a poetry reading, a video to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the completion of my book of poems against fascism. It actually became available for purchase on that same date, May 30th, 2025. Thank you to everybody who has purchased a copy. This is not about that, but because I made that video, I have continued to think a little bit about what it means and what it means particularly to me personally and to my career, as it were, as a writer of poetry. And I have had some thoughts and would like to share those with you. So it is hard to say where current events are going to take us, but I recall at one time I talked about my books and said that there were, I have to say that as a writer, as a poet, one can have no particular relationship to his own work. One cannot really assess them. To some degree, perhaps one may, but it's really immaterial. It's irrelevant to the task of a poet. And so I have no sort of critical relationship with my own poetry, with the books I have written, and so forth. But in one video, I mentioned that there were 3 works that stood out for me for external reasons, for what they meant in terms of the cause that produced them or their genesis, all 3 of which being prompted by events occurring in my country, the United States of America. And so the very first one where that happened was this book, Against Holy War. It was written, well, I won't quote you the blurb on the back, but it was written in an effort to suggest that after the felling of the World Trade Center towers in New York City, that the proper response was not and should not be a violent one. So this was published exactly, I think, or actually a few days earlier than, but I say exactly 6 months after the events of September 11th. What was that, 2001? So this should have a 2002 copyright date, and indeed it does. So that is one of them. In the run-up to the invasion of Iraq conducted by George W. Bush, I suppose at the behest of Dick Cheney and his ilk, I was part of a small faction trying to prevent the war, which of course did not succeed. One of the activities which I engaged in the effort was I wrote a play. I am able to knock out a play fairly fast, so I had something ready in pretty good time. The play is titled War for Peace, and I never managed to get it produced. And I wrote sometime later an introduction to the play, trying to describe for posterity the circumstances surrounding its composition and so forth. And I thought that I would read that for you. I may actually have done this before. I don't know if I have or not. But I came out with a book of quote unquote literary criticism. I call it Lit Crit. All of these books are available, well, not all of them, at my Lulu page. The Against Holy War, you'll have to find that from a used vendor somewhere. But the play Against Holy War has not been published. Recently, when I had Microsoft Word, I thought about putting it out. I just couldn't bring myself to work with the text. That's just generally the way I am with these sorts of clerical tasks anymore. But if I were to have published it, I would include this little essay which I wrote. I am not sure. I think I said it was written in 2010. It's at the top of the essay, and I'm going to read it to you. When the effort to get that play produced failed, I wrote a book titled The Condemnation. And this is the condemnation. It's a set of villanelles just doing what you would suppose the title implies. Bury this generation in the ground was the first line of the first poem. You can find it being read here and there on this channel. I've read it more than once, I am sure. So those are the three works that held and hold special significance for me because of the circumstances which produced them. And I say, I might also add inaugural considerations, not for the book as a whole, or it's really just a chapbook, but for the poem which I wrote it was to be an inaugural poem for Barack Obama. After he had won the election, I thought I should put something together for the occasion. It was not used. I don't know that he ever had a chance to consider it, but as a friend of mine said, well, the poem was longer than his speech anyhow, so that may well have been the factor. Here you can see a picture of me at the museum, which used to be a media museum in Washington, D.C. It is no more. But this is sort of a paltry thing. And I have written other works, not the least of which being against fascism. And in the past, I wrote small poems. These poems all responding to the United States action in Iraq underneath the Bush-Cheney regime, or administration, I guess would have been the word back then. 2 terms, elected and then re-elected by the American public. But both of these books, the poems are just sort of neither here nor there, just mad dashes off from the pen just to deal with the angst or whatever it was welling up inside of myself. So I don't consider those. And other books of mine, all here and there, may well contain this or that poem responding to certain situations. So my first book, which is a compilation of sundry poems, Embodiment and Release, that has a couple of poems, say, dealing with the situation that Anita Hill found herself in when Clarence Thomas, who continues to sit on the Supreme Court, was first raised as a candidate for that position by George H.W. Bush, then president. It has had a lasting impact upon our country, to be sure. But that aside, these three works hold special meaning for me. And then I just thought I would share those others. And then I realized also that the last book that I wrote may well be the last book that I write. It would be well, is Reynaldo in Sequence, which has nothing to do with my country, other than, I suppose, it occurs in Cuba, and my country right now is trying to destroy Cuba. Trying to take it over, I think, is the main gist of the United States actions currently. But as I said in the poetry reading video, I realized that this, if that other was the last book I wrote to have at least been begun under the democracy, this is the last book I will have written underneath the empire. So, as a writer of poetry, that means my circumstances are changed utterly. I think it is in here I mentioned. I used to write plays, comedies in particular, and in, I think, 2015, with the election of Donald Trump, the type of play that I wrote became impossible. So my dramatic career, my rather undramatic dramatic career, ceased immediately, and I have often stated that were I to try my hand at playwriting again, I would have to invent some kind of a new form for myself, or I would have to figure out how to do something that others have done in a way that suits me, such as writing a tragedy maybe, but I'm not at all suited toward that kind of thing. My plays were mostly all comedies in the vein of Aristophanes, that is to say, dealing with the body politic and its attendant issues, if you will, or even inherent issues. So, as 2015 brought a certain cessation to the possibilities before me or before my pen, so certainly the end of the empire has also, it is harder for me to say what that would mean, but I am at the tail end of my illustrious poetic career regardless. That is an allusion to a poem written by a good friend of mine, Richard Huttle, whom I met in the class of Paul Carroll at the University of Illinois Chicago Circle campus. So I consider largely that my functionality as a poet has finished. The circumstances which produced the poethood, so to speak, have evaporated, elapsed, dissipated, so that even though I might take a pen to paper, anything that I write would be of almost exclusively personal relevance. So it would not be of much use to the world at large or to any person outside of myself, which is the way things work, I think. I have one last service that I would like to give my country and hope to give my country if I live so long. But none of us can foresee events of the future. So we will see if that happens. I didn't mean to drop that off, but I did want to take that off, that pink hat, which I have worn in a couple of videos here and there, or had it in the background, I think. So let me get on with the essay, which is very small, very short. It used to be up at my website, which no longer exists. Possibly one could find it through the Wayback Machine. Of course, one could also find it in this book. The play itself, well, that will have to wait for another time. So, Introduction to War for Peace. The play was written in 2004, so this introduction came 6 years later, I guess. Introduction to War for Peace. 6/6/2010. When I heard Colin Powell give his speech, upon the face of it, so full of lies, I knew the cause was lost. The United Nations accepted it, and the American populace, or at least that segment of it that was most active and vocal, clearly supported the idea of a war and presented itself as staunchly pro-invasion. The anti-war cause stirred up rallies here and there. Famously, even a speech by not yet Senator of Illinois, Barack Obama, but little movement else. There was talk in Chicago and elsewhere, as I recall, of putting on a 2,000-year-old play by Aristophanes that was vaguely anti-war, but not strictly applicable to the situation at hand. The proposed invasion of a sovereign nation which had not harmed us nor threatened to do so, and in which, at that moment, until they got kicked out under American pressure and before completion of their task, international arms inspectors were busily proving, as has been confirmed amply by hindsight, that the capacity to do so was absent. As Bob Lasseter had said during the first Gulf War, Saddam's war machine has not even so much as raised a fist in response, and was much less able to after a decade of sanctions. Still, I thought, possibly, if the right play could be put on, something new and created expressly for that purpose, even as Aristophanes' plays had been tailored to the exigencies of the moment, maybe the tide could be turned or slightly diverted. If not stemming the overwhelming pro-invasion rhetoric and support, at least it might contribute to the splintering off of some of it. At the very least, I thought, having no impact the presentation of the play would show and affix in the historic record, so to speak, that a small band of theater people had raised their voice in protest, thereby affirming that the pro-war chorus had not been unanimous. I set to work immediately writing and typing the play, proofing and printing it with an efficiency I had developed over the course of many years, though even the pace of its composition surprised me. Excuse me. From the moment I first took up my pen till when I had a printed and bound copy in hand, less than a week transpired. Simultaneously, of course, I was sending out emails and making phone calls to local theater companies, none of which had ever been responsive to my work much in the past, in search of like-minded individuals that wanted to make a statement against the rush to war, a war of choice, as Senator Robert Byrd so aptly named it. Printed copy in hand, my efforts redoubled, and I even set out on foot to some of the smallest storefront companies within my geographic compass. Needless to say, those like-minded individuals were never found, though I did get 2 commitments by theatrally connected people to read it. One, presumably realizing the urgency of any such proposed undertaking, got back to me within a week or so's time, but found the play too obvious. Why, if it was so obvious, I wondered, would you not rush to do something to prevent or forestall the massive bloodletting that was sure to take place if the invasion went ahead as planned? Blood, as actor Sean Penn would say, that would wind up on American hands. The other, busy with some production at the Goodman, where she had me leave off a copy of the script, never got to it in a month's time. And when I saw that the clock had effectively run out, I returned to retrieve it from a security guard, never meeting with the lady in question, who was still mightily enwrapped in her production. I hope the production was worth her while and justified the neglect of her civic duty. It was not uncommon for me to find people with other pressing commitments which prevented them from thinking about the war. One lady who had hosted a play reading of mine in the past planned to do so again, until she remembered she was having her kitchen redone and could not accommodate. I tried to schedule it at my inadequate apartment, hoping, if not theater professionals, at least theater students, or even possibly persons off the street, might take an interest. An ad hoc performance in the park would be better than nothing, as it became clear that established theater companies, including the most small and tenuous, would have neither the will nor the flexibility to move on anything in a timely fashion, so locked into the set multi-production season which present-day funding and season ticket sales have entrenched. The idea was greeted with enthusiasm as I called, then faxed to theater departments a flyer for the proposed reading, and I even took one phone call from someone who felt that an anti-war play would be a good idea. But no one came. And the war came, as Lincoln said. though finally, when it became evident that even the minutest interest could not be drummed up, I withdrew from what had been a round-the-clock effort in promotion, rather to write my book, The Condemnation, which was finished before the first bombs began to rain on Iraq. It, along with Against Holy War and this play, represents, irrespective success or failure of the venture, perhaps my proudest achievement as an artist. Soon, a decade will have passed since completion of this first work, and already the fateful year of 2003 lies far behind us. 2003, or was it 2004? Yet I do not think the intervening time has proven the stance I took to have been incorrect. Victory has been achieved in Iraq, if victory can be considered the decimation of a country with perhaps upwards of 1 million human deaths, which otherwise needn't have occurred, and even greater displacement. But conflicts continue to rage in Iraq and Afghanistan. No easy conclusion to either of these lies in sight, and the can of worms which has been opened will not easily be sealed, save possibly with the aggregation of so much accumulated time that present interests and present passions have been but dimly remembered. These three works, but most especially War for Peace, represent relics of the time, when the context surrounding this dramatic effort has been washed away, eroded by eons as it were. It may prove itself to have been the least well-rooted. Such is the nature of drama, and most especially of comedy. Yet, bolstered by so much of the momentous context which can never be washed away until the latest date, perhaps, it may yet hold its place in the soil, even as Sean Penn's words of December 15th, 2002. I hope it will be, even as, I'm getting confused about the date, I guess it was 2003. Even as Sean Penn's words of December 15th, 2002, I hope will be remembered. So here's quoting. I am a citizen of the United States of America. I believe in the Constitution of the United States and the American people. Ours is a government designed to function of, by, and for the people. I am one of those people, and a privileged one. I am privileged in particular to raise my children in a country of high standards in health, welfare, and safety. I am also privileged to have lived a life under our Constitution that has allowed me to dream and prosper. In response to these privileges, I feel, both as an American and as a human being, the obligation to accept some level of personal accountability for the policies of my government, both those I support and any that I may not. Simply put, if there is a war or continued sanctions against Iraq, the blood of Americans and Iraqis alike will be on our hands. My trip here is to personally record the human face of the Iraqi people so that their blood, along with that of American soldiers, would not be invisible on my own hands. I sit with you here today in the hopes that any of us present may contribute in any way to a peaceful resolution to the conflict at hand. Unquote. I tried to contact Penn's and a few other production companies outside of Chicago before giving up the effort, all to no avail. The theme of the play was provided by a dream I had several days before embarking upon it, in which a backyard barbecue exploded, but I and another fellow managed to jump ourselves across a fence into safety in the nick of time. Although I had no such notion at the time, with retrospect, I like to think that he may have been Penn, with whom I have no acquaintance, and it is to him, the actor in his courage at a time when few others in his profession displayed it, that I would have publication of this play dedicated. He had much to lose and sacrificed much in the cause of justice, unlike so many others. The small multitude in Chicago as marched on Lakeshore Drive after the bombs had begun to fall. Too little, too late. This play and the other two books of which I made mention may have been too little, but I am eternally grateful that they did not come too late. The circumstances created them even more than my talent, but so it is with art. But I am privileged to have been the conduit whereby they came to be. War for Peace may never see production during my lifetime, and when it does, conditions will certainly have changed to render it less than what it might have been. But ours is not to regret the lost potential. Outmoded relics and artifacts may yet serve a purpose, if but to jog the memory. A great travesty was perpetrated in Iraq and upon its people. That this remains largely unacknowledged by the American people today, at both the highest and lowest levels, remains moot. But the play, if never so forceful or prescient as I might like, may not be muted, but sends forth across the chasm of time and inevitable apathy or posed nonchalance its condemnation and criticism of the people which enacted such a travesty. Such travesties may, from time to time, be visited upon the world while there is man. It is my hope, however, that the play serves to remind its readers, or even one day, God willing, an audience, that although we dwell in what appears to be a sea of conformity, all need not conform. It is in this that the human personality is rooted. So, of course, today in 2026, the times have moved on apace, and the potential of writing about them has escaped from my hands. So I will still continue to do my little part as a citizen to the extent that I can in trying to thwart or subvert or undermine or counter this fascist imposition which the Republican Party is presently enacting upon us and upon our bodies and upon our liberties. I will do what I can. But as I say, from the pen, I expect nothing. And I have many times thought I was writing my last book. If the muse calls me to write something else, so be it. I will not turn away uh, the bidding of the muse. But I think all of the externalities point to the end of this road having been reached for me. So I wanted to share that little essay with you. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel. I should put a link to the poetry reading that I gave into the description box.